One day, long after I've gone silent, one day, you search among the mentions of my name, and you will find my words waiting for you, as fresh as the day I made them. And we shall sit beside each other, my words and yourself, cuddled up, wrapping us in a world anew, and you will find me then, the selves I dared to put out, and the selves I had hidden for you to find. You will finally know me through my words and uncover the many layers of my silence, and you will understand. With a wonderful lineup of poets like Pervin, Saket, Sekhar, Banerjee, Siddharth, Dasgupta, and Sufia, Khatoon, we present Once Self I Sing.
Some poetry for you, picked from current collections and upcoming manuscripts. And hopefully there'll be some sort of theme that kind of joins itself. If that happens, wonderful. If it doesn't happen, even more wonderful. I'm going to start off from a collection that emerges sometime perhaps next month or the coming months. My name is Siddharth Dasgupta, and the collection's called All These Streets We've Known by Heart. I suppose it's a gathering of addresses and intimacies, and here's a couple of poems from that collection. Right. I see God in the strangest places. Like that point on Manekji Mehta Road, where the pole from the scaffolding of leftover earth meets the truant branch of a nearby banyan tree, their union resulting in the birth of a cross that rests there, oblivious to the municipality, since God loves one and all. Or the tattered insides of a rickshaw painted garish, with the devoutly Hindu driver proudly having pasted a poster of an impossibly haired Hindi film actor staring into the myth of impossible fame. And that one line that weaves India, Bharat, faith, and deliverance into the one impossible dream, Shah Rukh Khan is God. I see God in bakeries, in the way this naan katai resembles a crouching Ganesh, in the way flourishes of icing and the assembly of crisp crusts resemble variously a perfect crescent moon or the portrait of multitudes gathered in their thousands before an audience of waves. I suppose the only place I don't see God is in the temple, within the stained glass stillnesses of a rousing mosque, within the antiquated romance of a Sunday mass. I see beauty here, perfectly portioned, faithfully rationed, but I don't see God. For God, I roam the private geographies of a city. I drop into the afternoon ennui of a bakery or two. I have cloud formations and the fractals of damaged light. I have my body, the cartography of its marks, the typography of its heart, its arms, its other terrific loyalists. And yes, I have Shah Rukh Khan. Old Parsi men folded within the stillnesses of yesterday's newspaper headlines. At Sharbatwala Chowk, I learned that history isn't a matter of teachers with canes and learning by rote, but the act of walking. Down frozen streets, ever so often looking up at windows, at the antiquities of their sills, and within their flutter, the past, all sleepy and misty-eyed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Siddharth. There's so much to love about those poems, particularly Shah Rukh Khan. And yeah, and of course the old Parsi gentleman in newsprint.
Yeah.
Yes, and anyone has any. So we thought we'd have a little bit of a conversation between poems also and give you a little context about what we're doing in this session. And very happily, it so happens, Siddharth, that I heard your work, this work for the first time. And what I have to read does tie in quite well, quite closely. It forms an interesting conversation with what I just heard. Yeah. So shall we? Yeah. Please. So the first poem I'll read is called What is Your Good Name? And a name is probably the first question we ask of someone, and perhaps even the last question we ask of ourselves. So this is my exploration. What is your good name? I must start with the story of how Ma wanted to name her children after gods, so that with her last breath, when she'd call out to her faraway brood, and she was certain she would, the gods would think she's reaching for them and grant her moksha. Instead, the astrologers charted the paths of the stars at my first breath and extracted from the thick of those constellations the syllables that would fall on my ears, all my years, like a whirling mantra. But my true name is neither sound nor subterfuge. To know it, you'll need to learn a dialect of silence, not muffled withdrawal or bubbling secrecy, but the vernacular of the grass, noiselessly opening yet another blade. The idiom of the wind when it meets neither tree nor bird, just expanses of inhale, exhale. In this tongue of self-knowing self, my true name will form its sound, and you will be able to spell it using the letters of your name. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah. And since Siddharth's poem was looking for God, here is a guide. This is the sculptor's guide to a goddess. So, she may have 2 arms, or 6, or even 10, but only 1 pair of legs, and nothing between them but a gentle fold of cloth. She may hold a lotus, a javelin, a conch, a sword, a trishul, or an asura's severed head, but never a bottle of moisturizer, a cupcake, a screwdriver, a microphone. The wrist should bend delicately, frozen in ethereal dance. But if that gets too pointless, choose one of the 4 mudras for a 10-year track to moksha. Let her smile or seem vacantly benign. Or, to work in the dead demon, she may glare through eternity. But never must she appear to celebrate with a pint or ponder the stock market or send out a tweet about bunions on her feet. She has been rooted to the spot for 300 years. Her hair must be worn tight or cascade over her shoulders. And though she has lived in these rain-blessed lands all these years, remember to forget all signs of frizz or gray. The breast must be tasteful C cups, okay, D cups. Live vicariously through your art, but never lactating or weighed down by gravity or milk. Sculpt her in 9 yards of silk sufficiently cinched at the navel. And though she is Mata to us all, remember, no stretch marks. Blood, if you must, is permissible on her face and hands the respectable red of battle, valor, men. Some may even dribble down her asura-eating mouth, but she has no use for sanitary pads or hot water bags. And even if she did bleed, she would have to walk out of the temple that week. Thank you. Thank you.
So, Pervin, I mean, there's so much emotion when we talk about, you know, the kinds of things we go through, right? But what's the best part is like, we are talking about it, and it's absolutely normal to do so. Yeah. I feel at the end of the day, as women, it's absolutely normal to talk about our body and our problems, completely own it.
But also, we still don't have an answer. Is it Shah Rukh Khan or a statue?
Yes,
interesting,
yes.
yeah.
But what is common is, it's not in the temple. It's not in the temple. God is not in the temple, yes. Sure.
I will read two poems from my latest poetry collection, the Fawn Gatherers Association. And since the theme of this session is One Soul We Sing, then I will keep to I, me, myself kind of my poems. The lilies and the hoe. I should have told you beforehand, I haven't kept any pebbles in my shirt pocket. They are postal correspondence of the brooks and the streams. Let them circulate ad infinitum. Mountains too have now some other things to do, like feeding a night to a hen, so that it can crow in the morning, full of noise of the lilies and the hoe. In your voice, I trace a whole city, its buildings and billboards, traffic signals, blinking in all wrong directions. But an ascent is never green. It smells of mulberry and alum. If you ever climbed a mountain, touching its Adam's apple, sorrow, its primitive fawns, flint, its armpits, and ambition, you would have known its insomniac. A descent is speed. It takes all that we have, the breath from our memory, the fire from our toes, the second part of our night, predicates from our voice, and I still hope to trek to a mountain in spring in an island east of the Straits of Malacca again. My second poem since I come from a tea region, I will read a tea poem. Second flush in Denguaja Tea Estate. In the middle of Denguaja Tea Estate in northern Bengal, I lie down with nothing in my head or on my hand. There are no lines on my palms. I want to start all over again like a tea garden in autumn. I snip the crushed duos tea leaves and borrow the organic smell of being grounded yet again, to grow the lines of head, fate, sun, life, and heart. And a local train passes through the tea garden like a lump in my throat for being what I am not. I cup my hands before the large shade trees. The stillness after each passage fills my two palms with unknown lines, like two second flush cups of tea, complete and lingering, as if it is a second bath. I squat before the blades of grass, violet grass flowers, and water tanker with a leaking tap, and I breathe my deepest in November. Thank you.
कैद हूँ मैं कैद हूँ जा कैद हूँ यूँ कैद हूँ खुद में तू रिहा कर जा रिहा कर यूँ रिहा कर मुझसे. So it's like we are, if I'm talking about singing of oneself, but what is oneself? When we are writing, we are leaving bits and pieces of ourselves in the writing. We are leaving bits and pieces of ourselves in the people we meet, we speak to, family, friends, everyone. And in the world of Sufism in general, the idea of fana rings very strong, that you annihilate yourself. You merge with the all-powerful light, and that's such a humbling experience. You were talking in a similar strain of thought, right? So most of my poems are that. I'm going to read from my first book. It's called Death in the Holy Month, and the second one is called Germination. Okay, finding. So sorry, it's taking a bit of time. Surmedani. Licontia of my nails are the first sighs of the Muharram moon. I wipe the slate clean, write 100 names of gratitude and God and a storm. Humanity is drowning and I am saving my soul. Mournful cry throbbing on the walls, Hamsira, my soul sister, pictures of the living or the dead, closes the doors of Rahmat. I draw a world without humans. Ripples in the sky's vacuum, why did my eyes want to shut off? Why my charcoal heart sealed away the mahogany wooden bed under which I played when I was a toddler. Home, home. I carefully opened a surmedani, copper-molded surahi, that a sacred pilgrim, my nani, had procured from a pilgrimage to Mecca in 1996. I was half to her knee, half in her wisdom. She knew it could bring out the hidden sorrows. The pigeons on the porch of my pupils meditate on one leg all day long. 3 times in each, the powdered coal, rich in coolness, burn the hollows of my eyes. Floods eating away 1,000 graves, empty homes, had no one to call its own. And for the first time, I remembered the taste of cold tears. Thank you. So it's basically on the surmedani, my nani brought back from Mecca, and we still hold that. It's like an heirloom, and I have a lot of fond memories about that. And she was like a Sufi soul for me. She's given me my name, which I'm very proud about, and she's introduced me to God in a very spiritual light that way. No, one more. 2 points, right? No, one more. Yeah. This again, the whole concept about paradise, right? Where do we find that peaceful place? So I have a garden in my home. My nani, my mom, me, we are very fond of gardening. That's one thing that has tied us. And I've seen my mother pray in the garden, my nani pray in the garden, and I have such beautiful images of it. There's a pomegranate tree in my garden that I have associated with deeply. I look at it as a woman growing in stages, rebelling, and identifying with the world. So this poem is of that. Last night, you didn't sleep well. I felt it in your flaking bark. I felt it in your tears. I won't abandon you or let you die in hunger or let you live without love or chase you away from this garden. I won't disown you or blame you for your flaws or shame you for being yourself. Your birthmark is your constellation, the amount of pain you are born with, the amount of loneliness you are to endure. We are the smoke of sadness living in a gray place above the horizon of right and wrong. Some say, eating your pomegranate will cure hate rising from a pain, hate consuming this world. When you drink the raindrops that fall from the pomegranate leaves, water seed take roots deep inside your stomach, slowly grow around your wounds and teach you. It always teaches you how to love. Thank you. Thank you. Do you have time now?
So apparently we have some more time for another round of poems. If my previous poem was a love letter to Pune, I suppose this next one is a love letter to Bombay and a letter of love to this life as a writer and other words. Within the tropical blush of a Bombay afternoon, the confessions of a fabled Hindi film studio serving as an address, the Egyptian writer Adhav Suev says, "The Nile is the longest river. The Nile is also the loneliest river." I'm struck by how you could replace Nile with a clutch of other carefully chosen words. And the sentence would keep its form just the same. Marriage, monsoon, grief, love, drought, harvest, kiss, age, beauty, hell, even life. The Nile is the longest river. The Nile is also the loneliest river. The words dance among the homes and churches that litter this leafy neighborhood, into the creaking beneath the weight of their own length, beneath shadows fumbling into the folds of their private solitudes. Crickets confess love for each other. A 10-minute walk removed, waves do much the same, sending brine-soaked letters drenched with Arabian laments, crashing into the paths of rocks and faith. The Nile is the longest river. The Nile is also the loneliest river. Another word comes to mind, capable of replacing Nile with no concession to the legitimacy of the statement. That word is writer.
Thank you, Siddharth. Yes. Long and lonely life, yes.
But happy. Let's,
Especially in spaces like these, yeah. So I'll end my reading with a poem that's close to me because it references, I come from the Zoroastrian community, and it references one of the more controversial rituals, which is the death rituals of the community. The poem is called Almost, or Vultures Circling the Towers of Silence. And according to Zoroastrian faith, when a person passes away, the body is offered to the wild, and vultures and other wild animals are invited to eat it. And that is considered a person's last act of charity and final act of merging. So this is called Almost, or Vultures Circling the Towers of Silence. You can't see it, but the poem is written in 2 columns. You can see it, yes. You haven't really been the cat until you've also been the bird, caught in its furry hook, your heart pulsing blood into her gelid veins, your beak and belly the food that will form claw, teeth, and cat. You haven't really been the bird until you've also been the cat, wordlessly conquering air, gravity, prey, working the warm flesh with your teeth and tongue, nature's cutlery, so clean, almost kind. You're most alive when you're almost dead, most joyous when the last flicker of the shadow is still inching its way out, most present when your absence expands, most you when you're almost the other. Thank you. Thank you.
Look at my hand, there's something else. Let them be flowers and spades, flowers, spades. A fluid room inside my head. A chair is here, a chair. A window filters light into my eyes. In a field of daffodils, I fumble for keys. A chant in my head, feeling restless, and flying, and climbing a hill, climbing. Oh, India, I fumble for air, whip up air. Inside my head, I fumble for my head. My head. Thank you.
I think we had a beautiful session. बस 2 लाइनें कहूँगी. कोई नहीं है, ए राख सूफी के तेरा कोई नहीं है, ए खाक सूफी के तू कुछ भी नहीं है, ए राख सूफी के तू कुछ भी नहीं है. The whole idea that we come from dust and we go back to dust is what the most humbling experience of the self. And again, the whole idea that we are born from words, we are going back to the words. So with this, I pray that we have a lot of people who pray for us, और दुआओं की ज़रूरत सबको होती है. It's the most beautiful thing to know that we have that in our life. So I hope you all have a good day. Thank you.